Welcome to Couple Reviews, where I don't really think I need to redeem myself from the last episode. The romance in the Santa Clauses Part 2 was too short, but I'm feeling pretty good about the romance in the Santa Clauses Part 3. Had enough jokes in there, made up for lost content. But I'm going to try to keep that momentum going with the romance in the Santa Clauses Part 4. Normally I like to have a different video between installments of the same sub-series, but this time we're going straight from the romance in the Santa Clauses Part 3 to Part 4 because I'm liking how this series is going. The romance in Disenchanted Part 2 is going to have to wait. The romance in Stargirl Part 9 is going to have to wait even longer. Willow is going to have to wait a little bit longer. I've recorded the analysis of the first 2 episodes of Willow. I just haven't edited it yet because Santa Clauses. So, previously on the romance in the Santa Clauses, at long last Cal has found a woman who's not off-put by his weirdness. Sandra descends further into madness with her horse friends, and Carol tried to make Scott the lesser one in the relationship. However, they're about to get sucked back into the Santa Claus life because elves are disappearing at the North Pole because Simon can't do his job correctly. Okay, so that's... what? Well, I knew he was going to be in this series from the trailers. I didn't think that he was going to be this reveal, though. Alright, Bernard is back, and that's the big reveal that the last episode is building towards.
What's with all the theatrics, and why do you look like an old man?
Well, I met someone, a human, so I made the jump and gave up eternal youth as an elf.
Gave up eternal youth. I've never liked that trope. Why do you need to die with the person you married? Why can't you just have a long, happy marriage, and then when she dies, you can have another long, happy marriage? Why do people think it's so romantic to say, if I'm gonna die of old age, you're dying with me? It is nice that we finally got an explanation for why he wasn't in the Santa Claus 3, I guess.
My nifty little clicker. Works on sea lions, too. Oh.
Whoa.
Great to see you. Look great.
Well, that's overpowered.
You're the Santa that fell off my roof. So you're here to sue me or something?
That night on your roof was not the first time we met.
Are we rewriting the story of how he became Santa Claus?
Scotty Calvin, the boy with the long list. You know, Santa doesn't bring you everything you want.
The bike isn't for me, it's for Jimmy. And the doll's for Angela, the rosary for Sister Mary, and the slow cooker for my parents.
Aww.
But I'm here because of an accident. I saw you slip off the roof. You fell.
You think someone yelling, "Hey," really made me slip and fall? I'm Santa, baby.
Did he die on purpose?
Am I the first human Santa?
I thought a human Santa could raise his family in the North Pole, and perhaps those kids would inherit the magic of the North, making the passing of the...
What do you mean the first human Santa?
Perhaps those kids would inherit the magic of the North, making the passing of the torch less up to the whims of a bunch of pompous ethereals.
My kids don't have any magic powers.
You sure about that?
Well, we know that they do have magic powers. Cal can see visions in his sleep, and Sandra has super speed that allows her to catch up to a horse. Obviously, she does not have the magic ability to talk to animals. That's just her madness. So he is saying that Scott is the first human Santa Claus? So what were the other Santas then?
Hey, no big deal. I was just with St. Nicholas.
His undertaking injected true magic into the world, and from that magic emanated the world of claws and elves, ethereal beings who carried on the mission.
So the other Santa Claus. The first time I heard that, I thought that the Santa Claus was always a human and the elves were manifestations from that human. But I think that originally Santa Claus was also a manifestation of the magic created by the original St. Nicholas. The other Santa Clauses were all ethereal beings that just popped into existence because of that magic.
Each Santa was chosen to meet the challenges of the...
What do you mean, chosen from what, then?
The Clauses were created to guide you. The Santa Claus, the Mrs. Claus, all of them.
So what I'm hearing is that the contract clauses were created to guide specifically Scott, or any humans that came after him. If we're about to hear that Santa Claus never actually died, then that would explain why the elves didn't share a tear over him. They even said in a previous episode that they're not allowed to discuss the Santas that came before. So it could be that they all knew he was intentionally retiring, so that's why they weren't broken up about it. They couldn't talk about it, which is why they didn't say a word to him when he got there. Well, most of them didn't. So if they're all ethereal beings who retired rather than died, that would mean that Scott isn't going to go to the Yuleverse when he dies, I'm guessing. Also, this does explain why Scott grow older and potentially die of old age, while the elves and witches and other legendary figures have been alive for centuries.
If you lose your hope, you'll disappear.
You can be as sad as you want if you wear one of these bad boys.
Give her a hug or something.
Disappearing. Why didn't you lead with that?
I'm surprised the system is still working. There must be some magic source from within the North Pole. I just can't figure out where it is.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
Mom's Christmas.
I was decorating for Mom.
Mom's dead.
You know, she once told me that she wished she could bottle that Christmas feeling so she could use it on those other days that get you down. Gosh, I wish she could see all of this coming true.
I know it's July. I just needed it.
Oh, he's been doing this Christmas every day thing in the name of what his wife wanted. Aww.
Long story short, I retired too soon. I hired the wrong guy. I've got to go back to the North Pole.
But we were finally going to have Christmas together.
It's not that weird for families to celebrate Christmas on a different day because they're too busy on December 25th.
All the clauses, all of them were created for us.
So I was the first Mrs. Claus.
I didn't ask.
Of course you didn't. So what you're...
Of course you did. Probably should have asked about that, Scott. If Carol is the only actual Mrs. Claus in history, why does Mrs. Claus have the overstuffed armchair reputation?
We were specifically chosen. Well, that changes everything. We have to go back.
No, that's not. Listen, it's too dangerous. Get some stuff together. I will think of a plan down here.
Right. Yeah.
I don't want the family to hear this.
Okay.
Going to the North Pole. We're going to stop Simon.
Scott, what are you doing? Why are you going behind your wife and kids' back like this? They wanted to come help you, and for all you know, there's no danger to keep them out of. You don't know that Simon will be too dangerous for your family to be around.
But I kind of need to find Betty first. I've realized she's the most important one in my life.
Aww. And for a while, he's thought that Scott was the most important person in his life. But of course, now that he's had time with just Scott and no Betty, well, then kind of puts things in perspective now, doesn't it?
Where's Dad? I think he left us.
I'm gonna kill him.
Oh, well, no, Mom, you can't kill Santa.
Yeah.
Because then you'd become Santa. And how would that work? Huh?
I'm gonna kill him.
Oh, well, no, Mom, you can't kill Santa. Because then you'd become Santa. And how would that work?
Because you become Santa. That was hilarious. We couldn't have you become Santa. That's obviously the only reason you can't kill your husband. Is saying that like it was a serious suggestion and also like it's a funny thing that would happen.
Hi. Hey.
Hey.
Although I do hope that we're not playing Flip the Sheep. That game led to my parents' divorce.
Sorry, something's come up. I'm not sure we can do game night.
Oh, no bigs.
Oh, no, babes. You can just take her along with you to the North Pole. Right?
Where's this come from? And how did they get here so quickly?
Oh, through the hole in the sky.
Oh, he's the only one who can see it.
If only we could get back through that vortex.
Just order a piano, then either enough drones to carry a piano or an especially large drone that's capable of carrying a piano will arrive with a piano, and then you just jump onto that drone when it's done, and then since it's strong enough to carry the piano, it'll carry you back through the vortex into the North Pole.
But you may think I'm crazy.
Oh, sweetheart, crazy lost all meaning a long time ago.
I thought she was gonna say, "Oh, sweetheart, I always thought you were crazy." Oh, by the way, they explained what happened to Bernard, so great. Now what happens to Curtis and Judy?
Is it true the elves are disappearing?
Yes.
Will they come back?
No.
And I'll tell my dad too. He'll definitely want help.
I'm sure you will.
He's kind of the reason why they're disappearing, but okay. Betty?
Betty?
Does the North Pole have swords in a Ronin costume for Noel?
So I have to go away for a while, and I can't tell you where, and I'm not sure when I'll be back.
No! These secrets are not healthy for a long-lasting relationship.
You're just like all the other guys.
Oh, no.
Wait, what other guys?
Just tell me the truth. Whatever it is, you owe that to me.
Okay.
Okay.
My dad is, or was, but might be again, Santa Claus.
Wait, yes, but you need to have some sort of proof.
Goodbye.
Stay up on Christmas Eve. Santa will come down your chimney, and then you'll see it's really my dad.
So why would he come down my chimney?
To give your little brother the looky Funko Pop he wants?
How do you know that's what he wants?
That kind of... when I said magical proof, I was thinking like popping a Christmas decoration into existence from nothing, or perhaps flying on a reindeer. That just looks like you've been spying on her family.
I'm the only one left, Chief.
Okay, well...
I told them all to wear these foil caps so they don't disappear. They laughed at me.
Did that hat actually work?
Butter, what if I told you that you could fly like Santa's reindeer?
No.
Next, you'll be telling me the octopi are aliens.
Okay. Ready?
I think my piano idea was less of a long shot. They are definitely hallucinating in the storage closet. Not a bad episode. I think I liked the last episode better. I think Cal didn't handle that very well with, Riley? Yeah, Riley. Literally all he needed to say was, "Family emergency, I'll be back in a few days." He didn't have to say, "There's something big I can't tell you about." They even could have gone with that, "We're too busy on Christmas, so we're gonna celebrate it on a different day" thing, and then invited Riley over to their house on their rescheduled Christmas. That would have been perfectly fine. And again, that proof he tried to use was full of holes. And if his dad doesn't come down the chimney, or if she doesn't stay up to see him, then she's going to assume the worst. For the Santa Claus 2, I talked about half of it in The Romance in the Santa Clauses Part 2, and then I talked about the other half in Part 3. I might just do the entirety of the Santa Claus 3 in this video for a couple reasons. Number one, Santa Claus 3 isn't as good as Santa Claus 2. Second reason, there's not as much romance in Santa Claus 3 as there is in Santa Claus 2. And number 3, I kind of want the last thing in the timeline to be the last thing that's covered in my Romance in the Santa Clauses series, if that makes sense. But before we get into Santa Claus 3, I want to talk a bit more about that episode. We now know that Scott was picked to be Santa Claus. It wasn't just an accident, which, I mean, on one hand, it's kind of weird that a guy as cynical and unbelieving in Santa Claus was chosen to be... He was a divorcee, by the way. It's kind of weird that he was chosen to be Santa Claus. But on the other hand, it does make sense with reasons that they didn't point out. The reasons they cited for Scott being chosen to be Santa Claus was this scene of him as a child wanting to get presents for his family, which isn't that unique. If I was tasked with explaining why Scott was chosen to be Santa Claus, I would say, well, he has experience at a toy company in upper management, so he could be a toy designer at the North Pole and also have management skills that would carry over to leading the elves. And also he has experience as a father, so he would be able to apply some of the elves, the elves aren't children, but they kind of act like children, so Scott, being a father, has some applicable experience for how to lead kids, if that makes sense. But it's weird that he picked a divorcee because he wanted someone who could raise a family in the North Pole. So he picked someone who was divorced and already had a kid that wasn't born in the North Pole. That's kind of weird. And let's talk a bit more about that part of the episode where Carol asked if there were other Mrs. Clauses, and Scott said he didn't ask, and she said of course he didn't. They played that off like a joke, but I think that that's something that needs to be addressed. They both seem to have this problem of over-prioritizing their own reputations and not being mindful enough of the other person's role or the other person in general. And Carol was saying, I guess we'll go back to the North Pole even though we've got a good thing going here, at least she does. But there's no discussion of maybe we could split the time back and forth. They just teleported Scott to the North Pole, so it'd be pretty easy for them to set up a system like this. It seems like Carol has just, how do I put this into words? Carol was so easy to be convinced to go back to misery, as if she felt like her time in the real world was too good to be true, and it was like her thinking that was reasonable for her to give this stuff up because it's her lot in life, I guess, which screams of unhealthiness. I really hope that they address this stuff in episode 6 and come to a conclusion that everyone's happy with. Santa Claus 3, The Escape Clause. Now, you've probably heard people say that this is the bad one, but what you probably haven't heard that many people say is there's actually a lot of good ideas in this movie. They weren't executed well, but they were not too bad ideas. So, like Martin Short as Jack Frost, that's not a bad idea. Having the in-laws come over to the North Pole and convincing them that it's Canada, that's not a bad idea. Having most of the film take place in the North Pole, that's a pretty good idea.
And you had us sit in coach.
No, that was first class. And I got a chance to sit next to Tony Bennett.
No, these two, let's back up a bit. So the inciting incident of this movie is Carol has been missing her parents and wants to see them again, so Scott goes through this rigmarole of bringing them to the North Pole while keeping up the cover of him being a toy maker in Canada. And also, Jack Frost is trying to get Santa Claus's job. Of course, the reason why Carol hasn't seen much of her parents lately is because she's been at the North Pole, and that's been kept a secret from her parents that Scott is Santa Claus.
And there were bears?
Yes, and it was freezing.
And it was freezing weather?
Yes.
Let me see if I understand this. You did not enjoy the trip to Yosemite?
You heard me.
So right about now, you're thinking, wow, they seem pretty unhappy with each other. They're probably going to reconcile their problems by the end of the movie. You would think so, wouldn't you? You would think so, wouldn't you? That's a very reasonable thing to think, that they would reconcile their problems. But things only get so much worse for them. And then they get very bizarre. and uncomfortable. Now, there is a very funny line here that I've got to shine light on.
These people are short. What's the deal with them?
Have you ever been to Canada?
No.
This is what Canadians look like.
That's hilarious. That try to gaslight them and telling them that this is Canada and this is how Canadians look. So Jack Frost tries to sabotage the North Pole because he found out that Santa Claus can make it so he was never Santa at all, leaving a job opening. So he's trying to stress Scott into quitting, but there's something worse we need to pay attention to right now.
I've never seen anything like that.
You're so adorable. You divine little kitten, you.
Jack Frost, nibbling at your nose.
I love it. Oh, it gives me chills.
What's going on over here?
Your mother is fat!
Yeah, what's going on over here?
Would you like to be my elf?
Huh?
You heard me.
He tries to play that off as auditioning her to be his elf, but we all know what was going on there. And she seemed very into it, despite her being a married woman and all.
Hey, what happened?
Oh, nothing, except that you didn't tell your in-laws that your ex-wife is spending Christmas with you.
More secrets.
More secrets? Have you had long conversations with him in which he could explain the dynamic he has with his ex-wife? By the way, she doesn't look that bad with her hair like this. I don't know why she's suddenly having her hair in a bun in the Santa Clauses episodes 1 and 2. Carol is feeling neglected by Scott, who has very legitimate reasons to be busy, which she's kind of in this position where she understands why things need to be the way they are, and yet it still hurts, which that's not really a bad idea, but is in this movie. Let's go back to this scene earlier. By the way, Carol is pregnant. I haven't mentioned that in this video up until now.
Come here. Come here just for a second. Come here. Scott, come here.
That was a nice representation of him being split with her in Christmas duties.
No more gifts. You already gave me a birthstone necklace. I've amidst the cheese wheel.
Well, this is not for you. This is for the baby.
So that is a clever way of figuring out what it would be like for someone to be married to Santa Claus. Probably a lot of gifts. So much so that she would be asking for less of them. Remember how I said, unfortunately, it's in this movie? Well, let me give you a sample of the type of jokes in this movie.
Help me. Help you. Help you. Help you. Help me. Help me. Help you.
Don't be nervous. Don't be nervous.
Help you. Help me. Help me. Help you. Help me. Help you.
So you can see how those good ideas have gone to waste, obviously. And I will point out that I do hate when characters break up between films. So there is an effort to work with the fact that they're married in this movie, which I appreciate, even though it's in this movie where the jokes don't land and there's some bizarreness to it. Well, there's some of the not good type of bizarreness. We'll get more into that later.
Care for some company, Mrs. Claus?
Not from you, Mr. Claus.
Why not?
Because you can't spend time with me and get the toys ready, and I understand completely.
That is nice of her to understand that and being able to roll with the punches.
Family.
Family? We are your family, right, Elves? We're her family, right?
We love you, Mrs. Claus!
Taller family.
There's multiple ways to take that. It kind of sounds like the elves aren't good enough for her, but when she says taller family, I feel like there was a better way to phrase that. What she should be trying to articulate is that she still misses her parents even though she has the elves, which she loves, but it sounds like she doesn't actually care for the elves that much when she puts it like that.
Human family.
Oh, sweetheart, anything but the tears.
And she should be articulating more that she does love the elves, but she keeps... The message that she's sending is that she wants humans. She's forgetting the part where she also loves the elves, if she does love the elves.
And if I didn't want to be with you so much, I would go home, but I can't have it both ways.
Wait a minute. Maybe you can.
That's good that she's willing to put up with a lot of stuff to be with him, and it's good that he's wanting to make things better even though she was resigned to her fate.
Have it both ways.
SOS. Secret of Santa? The closely guarded secret of the North Pole's true location could be compromised, and Christmas, as we know it, will cease to exist, crushing the hopes and dreams of the world's children and extinguishing the joy of Santa's magic forever!
Aren't they fickle that they run on the belief of Santa, and yet they also don't want the secret of his existence to be common knowledge? Also, they say the secret of their location as if everyone doesn't know that Santa lives in the North Pole. Well, according to the legends, I mean, if they know that Santa exists, they know he lives in the North Pole. But you know what I mean, of course. You're intellectuals. You always know what I mean all the time.
You know, I cannot imagine how hard it must be keeping such a big secret from your folks. Do you ever find yourself wondering if it's all really worth it?
Oh, it's definitely worth it.
Apparently, you're still wondering that 18 years later, something like that. No, 16 years later.
And I'm sure you have a perfectly good reason for shutting us out of your life.
Well, funny you should say she does, but does she though? But does she though? I guess you can make the argument that the North Pole wouldn't have very good cell reception, which is why she wouldn't be calling them very often. I don't think they ever explained whether or not the North Pole has internet. Who's to say if they can email each other? So she kind of does have good excuses for shutting them out of her life completely. I mean, I guess she could visit during the summer or right after Christmas, well, soon after Christmas, but... Well, you know, actually, when she has access to teleportation magic, it is kind of messed up that she's never seen them that much. You know, now that I think about it, Carol seems to be whining about problems that she could easily fix herself. She complained about the Mrs. Claus reputation that she has in the Santa Clauses, and she complained about not seeing her parents that often when she could just teleport over to them.
It's busy season.
It's always his busy season.
That was a loaded sentence.
Tell your dad to do it. And then watch the suddenly displaced Mr. Claus run right over.
That's actually not a bad idea to get him to do that.
Hey, Dad, do you want to help me with the tree topper?
Yeah, in a minute. I don't know who he is anymore.
I don't know who he is anymore either.
He was kind of banking on that not working, though.
I know you're upset.
Oh, you picked up on that, did you?
Well, maybe that's why I invited you
it's
up
not
here,
as
bud.
bad as
so
being
Carol can be
ripped away
surrounded by
from
her
your
family for
and
love
told
and
you can't
support.
see them anymore.
While I try to do things you can't even imagine. But rather than try to make things work, it seems like you're trying to make things worse.
That's absolutely correct, what he just said. He's been trying to get stuff done while also going through these great lengths so that they can be here. And Bud has been criticizing everything this entire time.
That's it. We're leaving.
What?
And rather than try to talk things out anymore, now that he's been shown up and can't argue, he just leaves.
Maybe you're right. Maybe you shouldn't have come.
Well, based off of what he's seen from them,
Maybe I should never have come either.
well, come on, Carol. You know that your parents are horrible. Now, Jack is pretty slick in how he arranges all this drama with them to get Santa into his lowest low. So he tricks Santa into saying that he wishes he was never Santa at all while holding the snow globe. And he rewrites history so he was the Santa the whole time. So now Scott is in this alternate timeline where he was never Santa and Jack Frost was this whole time.
No. And you're not going out tonight.
Yeah, okay. What are you doing here?
Came over to see you.
Why?
Because we don't see each other enough.
Now, I call shenanigans on Scott never being there for Charlie in this new timeline because Scott was... Before Scott became Santa Claus in the first movie, he was trying to be there for his son. He wanted to hang on to his visitation rights, he was frustrated that Neil was becoming his replacement, so he always wanted to be a good dad to Charlie, even before he was Santa Claus. Also, in this timeline where Scott was never Santa Claus, Charlie is still a juvenile delinquent and a rebellious one at that. So now what's his excuse? In Santa Claus 2, Charlie was saying that his problem was that he can't tell other kids that his dad is Santa Claus. Well, in this timeline, his dad was never Santa Claus, and he's still a rebel who's probably spray painting everything everywhere and going out despite his mom's wishes. I guess that was just a lie about him having excuses under it being so hard for him. And I understand that he said that the reason he's messed up is because his dad is neglecting him, but I just explained why that doesn't hold up in court.
Can you help me find Carol?
Carol Newman, the principal of Charlie's school? Carol Newman?
Yeah, do you know where she is?
I don't know.
So in this timeline where Scott was never Santa Claus, he works at that toy company still, which, you know, it's a respectable position. He's a corporate guy, might be helping the economy even if he does his job well enough. And there's certainly people working under him who might be benefiting from his good management skills. That's, you know, it's a respectable thing. And he doesn't have a good relationship with his son now, which, I mean, Charlie is not really much of a treasure to be lost. He's a rebel and certainly someone who is losable and expendable. Oh, and also he's not married to Carol. Oh no, now we need to fix this. Something must be done. Go to the North Pole and confront Jack because you can't not be married to Carol.
Frost turned the North Pole into a theme park.
Neil has been taking Lucy to the North Pole ever since he and I got a divorce, remember?
Now, right about now, you might be asking yourself, what does Scott being Santa have to do with Laura and Neil's marriage working or not working? We'll get to that in a second.
Divorce?
They have an explanation, which we will talk about.
Dad, I don't like this.
That's just too bad.
Will you stay right here with me and hold my hand?
So why is it that elves weren't disappearing when this was destroying the spirit of Christmas? Maybe they were and they didn't notice?
What happened between you and Laura?
You don't really know because you were never around. You were never a father to Charlie. You put all the pressure on me, and guess what? He didn't want me to be his father, which messed things up pretty good between me and Laura.
So they do have an explanation here for why Scott, not being Santa, destroyed the marriage between Neil and Laura. Part of me wants to sarcastically say, because as we all know, it takes at least 3 supportive parents to keep a child from being rebellious. Ideally 4 or 5. But I mean, the fact that Charlie didn't want Neil to be his dad, I guess it kind of makes sense for that to throw a wrench into a marriage. The problem is that wasn't really set up by past films. Charlie always liked Neil. I think he did anyway. And yeah, he wanted Scott to be his father, which Scott always was a father to Charlie. There is room for arguments that Neil should have just rose to the challenge of keeping the marriage healthy, even though the stepson is super rebellious. But I think it's plausible that something like that could destroy a marriage, but I don't like that Neil is not taking any of the responsibility for this. And why doesn't Laura take any of the responsibility for it? She could have talked with Charlie and asked him to not be such a jerk to Neil. The long story short, Scott tricks Jack Frost into going back in time again, and he becomes Santa again. So we're returned to the normal timeline. Apparently, Carol and the in-laws have been looking for Scott.
It's just been a few minutes.
For just a few minutes.
Only been a few minutes.
They might have felt bad about how their
work out the way I
actions, as evidenced by the sad looks on their faces.
But he loses sight of what's really important. A woman falls in love with him.
So Scott was sent to this alternate timeline, in which he was never Santa, and one of his biggest things was, oh no, my family has drifted apart, and oh no, I'm not married to Carol. He hasn't been balancing Santa Claus with Carol as much, and he wants to do that now. He wants to put Carol first. Not being married to Carol was probably the worst part of not being Santa Claus. So Scott shows them that he is actually Santa Claus. Do you remember how I said that things only get worse with them and it gets bizarre and uncomfortable? We're getting to that very soon.
Hi, bud! Sylvia!
So, if you're keeping track, that is the second legendary figure that has blatantly flirted without objection with Sylvia while she's married.
Well, hello, Santa. This is a blast.
Mother Nature.
Buddy is literally falling in love with someone he just met at first sight while his wife is 10 feet away from him or less. Lucy saves her parents by thawing Jack Frost, and how does she do that? By giving him a warm hug.
Miguel! Dos platos de nachos, por favor. What's happening to me?
But they told me it couldn't be done.
They didn't know about magical hugs.
Why did the experts on this kind of stuff, why did they, whoever they is, I'm assuming the experts on this magical stuff, not know about magical warm hugs? Those effects did not hold up, by the way. And I'm not even an expert at criticizing CGI. So, why are Lucy's hugs so magical? I don't know. It's not like she was born at the North Pole or have any blood relations with a legendary figure. I mean, she's kind of related to Scott, but not by blood. Now we've come to more uncomfortableness and bizarreness, and not the good kind of bizarre. Just watch this. His wife is literally right next to him right now. I'm kind of getting the vibe from Buddy and Sylvia that they're pre-divorcees. You can kind of get the vibe that this series has accepting views on divorce. It seems to think that it was best for Scott and Laura to get a divorce, so maybe it'll be the best. So then maybe it'll be the best thing for Buddy and Sylvia to get a divorce too, maybe, is what they're trying to say. They don't really spell it out that they're going to get a divorce, but they have not fixed their animosity towards each other.
We named him after his grandpa.
That's right. Say hello to Buddy Claus.
They literally named their son after this guy. No wonder everyone just calls him Cal. Now we've come to the best part of the Santa Claus 3. The bloopers in the credits.
Action!
Do you like carrot juice? Beta-carotene gives me a buzz.
Honey!
I'm built for speed and comfort.
Oh.
Why did they not keep her cry for help in the movie? It seems like she's actually uncomfortable filming this.
You're weird, man.
Really, you don't look like Santa.
Well, I am. I'm sorry.
Well, that was good.
That was good,
All of a sudden, Rosemary Clooney showed up.
Well, I am.
I was laughing because it was in the scene.
There's no laughing in this
I was
scene.
happy.
At least they were able to have fun making this. It wasn't their fault that the script was broken. I think Scott did do a good job of reconciling the in-laws by telling them the truth and also accepting that they're going to be scrutinizing him a little bit. Well, I mean, some of the things that they've been criticizing were valid, so I guess it's good that they come to a middle ground of maybe not criticizing so much, but being open to constructive criticism sometimes, if that makes sense. But the thing is, Scott was saying that he needed to put Carol first and recognize that she's what's truly important. according to the Santa Clauses, he still hasn't been treating her like she's the most important thing. I guess it's all on episode 6 of the Santa Clauses to fix this, or season 2 of the Santa Clauses, perhaps. If they do come to a healthy resolution in episode 6, I will say that retroactively makes the stuff that came before good writing. If they just leave it like that, then that's a problem. Just doing that for jokes and calling it quits would not sit well with me. Tune in next time for The Romance in the Santa Clauses Part 5. Where we'll just talk about, maybe I'll talk a little bit about the movies, but it's mostly going to be about the Santa Clauses episode 6. Before we go, I'm just going to look up whether or not they've announced the second season. According to Jack Burdett, the Santa Claus season 2 is a possibility. There hasn't been any official announcements of season 2 that I can find. I'm hoping that there's another season because I'm liking this. It's funny. I like Cal's character a lot. Wishing for more depth with him and Riley. Part of me doesn't want this series to end until Sandra gets a love interest. I don't hate her character much. I mean, she has a few flaws to her, but she's alright, I guess. And I will never get enough Carol with her hair properly managed and wearing low-cut dresses. I'll never get enough of that, obviously. So remember to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, and I almost forgot. I recently released The Romance in Disenchanted Part 1, and right now, I'm looking at the views right now, and it currently has 1/3 of the views that The Romance in the Santa Clauses Part 3 has. So I know for a fact that some of you have not been watching The Romance in Disenchanted Part 1. Well, you should. It's pretty funny. There's this 6-minute tangent where I try to figure out what the word for different colored wooden boards on walls are called. It begins this running joke about Morgan being 20 years old. It's super funny. Go watch The Romance in Disenchanted Part 1, and I will eventually put out Part 2. Eventually. Haven't put them out yet, but I'm going to edit and release The Romance in Willow episodes 1 and 2, possibly as separate videos, one video for each episode, so look forward to that. Before those videos come out, let me just tell you my spoiler-free thoughts on the first 2 episodes of Willow. I hate the main princess. The queen is the stupidest queen I've ever seen, and Muffin Girl has no business being a Muffin Girl. That'll make sense later, but it has the potential to get better, I guess. There's a few almost funny moments here and there in Willow. I'm gonna release a video or 2 about the first 2 episodes of Willow, and then after that, I'll let the views decide whether or not I continue that series. If I don't get enough views from the Willow videos, I'm just not going to watch any more of that show at all. If I watch it, it'll only be for the views. But Disenchanted, I did like. And I have a spoiler-free section in my Disenchanted video if you haven't seen it yet. So remember to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, and have a Merry Christmas 18 days from when I'm recording this.